there's part of me that says, hey, it's way too early for an All-American team, much less a freshman All-American team. But when two of our guys make it, hey, go freshman All-American team.
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson with the AHSA Radio Network. That's me. And Jimmy Stein with Bama Online. That's him. Thank you, everydayers, for joining in all the time, every day, really. And thank you, newbies, for joining in. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And today we're going to talk about Alabama sort of ending game prep. I mean, not game prep, ending fall camp, starting game prep. We're going to talk about AK Deer's decision, which is later this afternoon. We're going to talk about ESPN with another playoff prediction. And we're going to start off with a pair of freshmen named to the On-3 freshman All-American team. Jimmy, I mean, it's sort of pretty soon we're just going to say, okay, we know that person X and person Y are having a baby. We know how good of athletes X and Y are, and we think that the product of those two is going to be an All-American 17 years from now. I mean, it's kind of silly to have a preseason freshman All-American.
I don't think it's silly at all. I always wish that Grant Nelson from North Dakota on our basketball team would date Abby Dusher from North Dakota on the softball team and then have Alabama offspring. I'm rooting for this to happen, and I don't even know that they know each other.
You're just trying to play matchmaker. I dig it. And I mean, there's part of me that likes that. Look,
no, I'm just saying. I mean, I would put their offspring on a prospect list in the 2040s.
I get it, but it is a little silly to say.
Well, I mean, I'm just going
freshman All-American. It's just, but having
a freshman All-American hasn't even played yet.
It's
that's what you're saying.
Silly. It's only silly when none of your freshmen make it. Two of our freshmen made it. You know, that's the thing. And those two freshmen are Zabian Brown and Ryan Williams. This is a Ryan Williams podcast. And look, I really believe Ryan Williams will be a freshman All-American. 100% in my heart. Don't just hope it. I believe it. I'm 100% on board. I'm pretty on board with Zabian Brown or Mbakwe probably making freshman All-American too. I'm on board with that. Ryan Williams, I think, is going to be a lock, barring injury. Now, first of all, what do you think about those two? And is there any other freshmen you would put ahead of them, or at least in the same category?
No, I wouldn't. I mean, I think this is based on, and it's hype, but it's based on the fact that right now, Ryan Williams and Zabian Brown both appear to be first-team players, and that's amazing because it's Alabama and it's not easy to get in the lineup. You're talking about an elite program. These guys weren't picked out because of, hey, we went back and reviewed the high school film and we're rethinking where we would put these guys. That's not it at all. This is based on, and I happen to know this because I got a little inside baseball in terms of the scoop from our intercompany communications. I mean, this is largely based on, hey, you know, what freshmen out there are tearing up fall camps? Which freshmen are zooming up fall camps? And there's no question that the two most impactful true freshmen right now at Alabama in this fall camp are Ryan Williams and Zabian Brown, because I would guess right now, we're still 11 days away from Western Kentucky, but I think Zabian's going to start at one corner. I think he'll be the starting corner opposite Damani. And I believe Ryan Williams will either start or play a significant role, like he could be the first wide receiver off the bench. And that's amazing because this is Alabama, where you're expected to compete for a national championship. This is not Kentucky, and I just picked a random SEC team where it would still be impressive for a true freshman to get in the starting lineup. But this is an elite top 5 program. And sometimes I think even Alabama fans don't realize how good Alabama is, you know, but it's not easy to get in this lineup, and Ryan Williams and Zabian Brown have, and I think Mbakwe's knocking on the door. Who's the quarterback on that team? I forgot to look.
Well, you know? That's interesting. And I was going to go over some of these because some of them have an Alabama tie. Some of them are just names.
Is it Julian Sayin?
Huh?
Is Julian Sayin the quarterback on that team?
No, because
freshman All-American
Will
team?
Howard, I think, has already been announced to start.
Right, but is there a true freshman starter?
Yeah.
Last year the best true freshman starter in the country was at Arkansas State because it's just hard to be a true freshman starter at quarterback.
It is, but Dylan Raiola is the quarterback. Here's the caveat. And while you were talking, people probably saw me looking at my other screen. I was looking that up because I was like, has he even been named the starter? He hadn't. So that's why this list is a little funky, because Xavier Brown hadn't even been named a starter.
To be honest, I would guess, without knowing, that whoever covers Nebraska that on 3 listens to is like, yeah, he's going to start.
And I think he will too. I think he will too. And I mean,
it would be inside scoop from someone that covers the team that he is the starter. And I think we do have a Nebraska site.
And I think it's a safe pick, just like I think Cam Coleman at Auburn is a very safe pick, because you know what? They don't have a lot of other receivers.
And I would put Cam Coleman on it for sure. As a matter of fact, I would go Cam Coleman and Jeremiah Smith before I would even go Ryan Williams. Why? Because Alabama's got other receivers, and I know Jeremiah Smith's a big deal at Ohio State. I know that, and I know that Cam Coleman. Who's going to be surprised if Cam Coleman's their best player on offense? I mean, I'm sort of expecting
not at all.
And that's a nod to Cam. Again, it's an SEC team, and I know Auburn struggled at wide receiver seemingly for years. But that kid is the real deal. I mean,
he's a dude. There's no question about it. Now, I'm not trading anybody for Ryan Williams. I want people to know that. But if Alabama had gotten Cam Coleman and Ryan Williams, I'd be ecstatic, and I would probably put them both on the freshman All-American team, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And in fact, just a little caveat, you mentioned Auburn struggled with wide receivers. They hadn't had a 1,000-yard wide receiver since 1999. So I wouldn't be shocked if Hugh Freeze makes a concerted effort to get somebody to 1,000 yards this year, and that somebody could be Cam Coleman. It wouldn't shock me. Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I think it's going to be
so much of it will depend on Peyton Thorne, right? I mean, it's a two-way street getting a wide receiver the ball, but I think we've, this is what we do. I think as fans, I do this myself. I'm not pointing fingers. I do this myself. I think we over criticize some kids to the point they end up underrated. Peyton Thorne's not as bad as he's been made out to be on Alabama boards this summer, or even frankly on Auburn boards. I'm sure Peyton's kind of done that circular thing to where they brought him in. He was probably overrated, but now he's been criticized to the point he's underrated. He's not that. He had a good year at Michigan State when they put a good team around him, and Auburn's putting a better team around him this fall. Cam Coleman's going to make Peyton Thorne a better quarterback.
Well, let me do this, Jimmy. Let me go through really quickly some of the guys that have some Alabama connection one way or the other.
Sweet.
Kevin Haywood as an offensive lineman. He's at Wisconsin, freshman All-American. Jordan Seaton, who was tied to Alabama at one time at Colorado. He's sort of a unanimous All-American because you know what? He's 100% going to start because, that's Colorado. One of the things Colorado's probably promised him. Then I'm looking at L.J. McCray. I think he was loosely tied to Alabama at one time. I would love to have this kid if he gets in the transfer portal after Florida implodes this year. Dylan Stewart, another guy.
Pass rusher.
From D.C. area who was tied to Alabama, at least loosely, committed to South Carolina. I think he's going to have a big year. Here's a guy that I was dying for Alabama to get. He ended up at Ole Miss, William Eccles, freshman All-American, at least preseason, I should say. That's a guy that I really wanted Alabama. Of course, Xavier Brown, Boo Carter, who, of course, Alabama will play, and also Terry Bussey at Texas A&M. That's another guy Alabama was certainly in on. And they say he's going to be in there as an athlete. So, a lot of guys with some, albeit loose Alabama ties in some positions. Yeah. You know what, though? When you have freshman All-Americans, you can start looking towards the playoffs for the present and for the future. And ESPN has come out with their playoff predictions computer-wise, I guess, for next year. And we got to talk about that. But I got to tell you about Ibotta. Listen, this, again, I love our sponsors because really about 100% of our sponsors I use. And Ibotta is one of them. Yesterday or 2 days ago, I went to Publix. And I got some stuff, and I was like, I need some drinks, but I didn't want any more Coke Zeros, whatever. I wanted something so that I found a drink on Ibotta that gives me cash back, right? And so I bought that drink because of the cash back, because if you get to $20, or more, you can download that straight to PayPal. Then you can buy some more groceries. And that's how it works for Ibotta for me. I love Ibotta. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONMLB, or it can be, Locked On College. Use code Locked On College. You can use code Locked On MLB too, but we'd rather use code Locked On College. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app. It is free. I've used it, I promise you, and start earning cash back to use code Locked On College. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store, and use code Locked On College. And again, it works at Walmart. It works at like Circle K. It works at all these different places. That's what I love about it so much. And it's like you can download it straight to your PayPal. Now, if you want to do a gift card, if you want to do Amazon or something like that, go for it. But I use it for PayPal because I just started accumulating some money. And then next thing you know, I got some major bucks in there. So it works out great. Ibotta is fantastic. And I did forget the overlay, so I'm going to put it here right now. It's by using code Locked On College. Right there, you can see it. That's my fault on forgetting the overlay. But I didn't forget to use Ibotta the other day because I used it. You know, there's a lot to remember when you're doing when you're hosting this thing, and like you got to.
Yeah, you think you had it tough. I had to fight off a sneeze during that thing. That's not easy to do, by the way. Sometimes everybody's got a cough here and there on the show, but man, that was the first time I had to fight off a sneeze.
Almost good work, you the real MVP. Listen, college football is back, and the Locked On College Football Podcast kicks off the action with a live season preview at 6:00 Central tonight, August 20th, on the Locked On College 24/7 streaming YouTube channel. This 4-part series covers each of the 4 major conferences with discussion on ACC, Big 10, Big 12, SEC, and which ones have a shot at the extended playoffs. Look, Jimmy was a part of this, so go check it out. Be sure to check out this special streaming on Locked On College 24/7 YouTube channel or on Amazon Fire TV, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, Jimmy, ESPN has come out with their expanded playoff predictions. And again, Alabama has made it. That's the one theme that I do love seeing about all these predictions. We've seen a lot of different ones. I've maybe seen one out of, say, 10 plus or minus that didn't have Alabama in it. Yeah. So I feel very good about where we are, where we sit with this whole thing. ESPN, number 1 seed, Georgia, number 2 seed, Ohio State, number 3 seed, Florida State. Okay. Gets a little tricky, a little wonky, because I'm going to tell you that game in Ireland is not going to be easy. Georgia Tech's better than you think. Haynes King's a good player. And number 4 is Utah. Okay. Again, I can see that. I'm not super fired up about it, but I see it. Now, here's where ESPN differs from some of the others I've seen. They have Alabama as a 9 seed playing at Ole Miss. The winner would, of course, play number 1 seed Georgia. The interesting thing about this, I think in this scenario, the one thing ESPN either forgets about or just ignores completely, in this scenario, I believe that Alabama or Ole Miss will have already played Georgia twice. If Georgia's won, then they clearly have won the SEC, so that means they've gone to the SEC title game. I think if Alabama and Ole Miss are 8 and 9, and they're the only other SEC teams in the playoffs, I believe one of them has gone to the SEC title game. And clearly what they're saying is they've already played – both of these teams play in the regular season, Georgia. By the way, they both play them at their respective homes. And so this will be – the winner will be playing Georgia for the 3rd time this year. I don't think that setup would fall into place. Now, the committee can tell us, hey, we're just putting people where we think they belong. We're not worried about extra matchups or whatever. I don't buy that for 2 seconds. Here's the other thing about ESPN that strikes me as odd and that I don't think would set up this way. Okay, so I mentioned number 1 seed is Georgia, number 2 seed Ohio State, number 3 seed Florida State, number 4 seed Utah. No other Big 12 team makes it. I'm sorry, Texas is in there. I screwed this up. Texas is in there, so maybe Texas will have played Georgia. But they've already played Georgia, by the way.
Yeah, Texas at 5 or 6, I guess.
Yeah. So it would be a three-peat for somebody. So 12, Boise State against 5 Texas. And then here's where I think things get really wonky for ESPN. Number 9, Bama at number 8, Ole Miss. So SEC on SEC crime again. Number 11, Penn State at number 6, Oregon. Big Ten on Big Ten. And number 10, Miami at number 7, Notre Dame, which is ACC and ACC annex. You know, this is like ACC.
A lot of rematches. I thought we had to get rid of the 2-team BCS because it produced a rematch.
Well, it's
get
not
rid of that, and
it's
now
not
we've got
necessarily
48 rematches.
It's not necessarily rematches in some cases. I don't think Penn State and Oregon play each other, nor Miami and Notre Dame, but they are the same conference. And here's I just don't see that.
They could end up in teams in the 12-team playoff. Obviously, many of them would be in their conference championship games. You mentioned something about Florida State losing in Ireland or potentially losing in Ireland. I'm on board with that. I'm big on Florida State's overrated. Now, they could win the ACC because the ACC isn't great. I mean, they could win the ACC. I just don't see Florida State in the same vein I see Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, Texas. I mean, to me, they're not. But, hey, let's see what happens Saturday. I'm with Luke. I think Georgia Tech – I'm going to predict a Florida State win, but I think Georgia Tech keeps that game tight. I'm big on exactly what Luke said. Florida State overrated, Georgia Tech underrated. So it's interesting when you have a collision of the over and the under, right? And it's in Ireland, which is wonky, period. I mean, that almost feels like a bowl game where, I mean, how are the players really focused on the game? I mean, most of these guys have never left their hometowns. Now they're across the pond with the accents and the pints of Guinness and everything else. I mean, it just has potential calamity to me written all over it. But I'm with you. Florida State overrated. I'm starting to get on board Miami a little bit. But, I saw a playoff thing that had them 11-1. I'm like, didn't Miami go 7-5 last year? A lot of the media I've noticed hop on this team's drastically improved. They signed a bunch of kids out of the portal. That puts them in your lineup maybe, but I mean, it doesn't do much for depth. And I think depth is going to be a big thing now that you're playing so many games, right?
And it doesn't do much for chemistry. That's another thing that I think is very undersold.
I couldn't agree more. And first year stuff, let's talk about Malik Benson, who I overrated last year. It's one of the things I've gotten wrong. I'm happy about discussing things that get them wrong all the time. But I was very wrong about Malik Benson last year. I said he would lead Alabama in receptions and yards and touchdowns out of the wide receiver group. I said that couldn't have been more wrong. But Malik is starting at Florida State, and the reports from him now are really good. And it reminded me, almost a rule with JUCOs. So many JUCOs don't have splashy debuts, but they're really good in year 2. Takes them a while to get their feet under them. And I think like what Luke's saying, team chemistry. Anyway, I just think Benson's going to be better at Florida State. DJ is a pretty good passer. I think Benson will probably be Florida State's best receiver, and Roydell's could be their best running back. So that's super interesting.
Yeah, and it's funny. I listened to a Florida State guy the other day talk about, we got all these transfers from Alabama, and they're all just kicking butt. And while I appreciate it, I'm pulling for them. I'm pulling for Roydell. I swear I am. I'm pulling for Malik Benson. I'm pulling for Earl Little. I'm not mad at any of these guys. At the same time, I feel like Alabama upgraded. So, that's the thing. But
that's why we're getting this Florida State's overrated. I mean, I like Roydell. Our fans underrate Roydell, but I'm cool with Justice and Jam and Roydell being at Florida State. That's fine. Malik Benson would not be stealing fall camp headlines from Ryan Williams or even Jeremy Bernard. I don't think Malik is as good as Ryan or Jeremy Bernard. And last year he wasn't better than Kobe Prentice and Kendrick Law, really, who were as or more productive than he was. And Earl Little, would he be starting at Alabama? Maybe. He would have to beat out Devontae Smith and Red Morgan. Maybe. I'm not convinced of it. Terrence Ferguson wouldn't be starting, and he's probably starting. I noticed he's first team or designation at FSU, TJ Ferguson. He ain't starting in front of Booker and Swamp Monster. So point being, Florida State is starting several guys who would not be starters at Alabama. So What does that mean? And would the quarterback, DJ Uiagalelei, better than Milroe? I haven't seen
DJ
anybody say that.
Uiagalelei.
I don't know how to say that. I start out with ooh. I start out with ooh, and I put in a lay. I put in something. I put in a lele. Yeah, exactly. I put in a lele down the road and just try to make it sound like I know how to say it, but I don't. I'm still working on Nico Iamaleava.
Yeah, Iamaleava is going to be tougher. It took us a while for Tagovailoa, but now it just literally rolls off the Tagovailoa. Okay. That was funny, Jimmy.
Well, it was pretty good. It was pretty good.
You made no motion. That hurt my feelings a little bit. Okay.
I talked to an Alabama coach when we were recruiting to him. How do you pronounce his last name? He's like, I don't know.
All right. We're going to talk about ending fall camp and beginning game prep here in just a second. But it all comes down to FanDuel. FanDuel's the best. And I'm going to tell you something. You want to jump in on this FanDuel stuff right now, because now football's heating up. It's hot and heavy. We got it this weekend. You want to be involved with FanDuel, and they'll have all kind of extra stuff for Florida, the Florida State, Georgia Tech game. It's going to be a lot of fun. And you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. Why wouldn't we talk about it? Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5, just 5 smacks, and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, which is awesome, you'll be able to watch every single regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game for the NFL. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time you want to. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook today. All right, Jimmy. So we are going to, move out of fall prep and move into game prep. That's awesome. It's a lot of fun to be thinking about getting ready for Western Kentucky now. And have we learned, is TJ Finley going to be the starting quarterback? Have we learned that yet or not?
I don't think we know for sure. Here's what I get for assuming. I assumed he would, but I was told by somebody that knows that program pretty well that the kid that threw for 500 yards in the bowl game is likely to be their starter. So that's worth Googling. But yeah, for those that want to know the Alabama team schedule for this week, Tuesday is pretty much the final practice of fall camp. I think they're still calling Tuesday fall camp. Wednesday, boy, this is crazy sounding, classes start. So that's a major change for the football team. Now they're going to continue to practice in the mornings. That is a new thing for them. But now they will have to start going to class. A lot of players take classes online, but a lot of them still go to class. But that starts Wednesday. So that's kind of the end of fall camp when school starts. And once fall camp's over, they start doing game prep. Now, they won't have a normal game prep practices until Monday. But Wednesday, fall camp is over. And once fall camp's over, it's like, okay, the games. I know one thing Saban would do, which I thought was pretty smart, is they already had mock-up game plans for every team they played all year long. And then they would work on it at the end of camp. They would say, okay, against Tennessee, this is the plan. Against LSU, this is the plan. Against Auburn, this is the plan. And they would give all the players a look at it. Okay, here's the looks. So when they did get to that game later in the year, it wasn't the first time they'd seen it. So that's what Saban did. I thought it was a really good idea. So I bet DeBoer does something similar. But the big news in terms of how practice is changing is with classes starting Wednesday. And a lot of you listening to this are listening on Wednesday. That's when classes start. So things really change for the players, and they no longer call it fall camp. But the actual, hey, we're working on nothing but Western Kentucky, that'll start Monday. And, of course, the coaches will complete their plan for the Hilltoppers over the weekend.
Just out of curiosity, look, I don't mind the morning practices. #1 is super cool. Today was just beautiful. I mean, I'm an early morning person. People, if you're ever on 280 around 5 o'clock in the morning, you probably see Luke Robinson going from Birmingham to Alex City. And today just felt awesome. I didn't even turn the AC on. I just rolled the windows down. It was fantastic. So I'm cool with the morning practices. Yeah. But our first 2 games are at 6 o'clock at night. And I wonder if Wisconsin's at 11 in the morning.
Wisconsin is 11. Mm-hmm.
But I'm wondering if we should swap it, or do you have any opinion on that? Does it really matter?
I know. I understand the question. I think it's a good question. That's a good question. Now, I would feel more adamant about if we're playing, Georgia or Tennessee in those first couple weeks, but
Which we will.
And I don't think they're going to change. I don't think they're going to change. I don't think the week of the Georgia game they'll practice at night. But I'm into the body clock thing, and that your body has to be kind of conditioned to perform at a certain time. Makes sense to me, but I just don't think that's how they do it. And heck, do NFL teams practice at noon every day? I mean, because most of their games are at noon. I don't know. I don't think so. I think NFL teams practice in the morning.
No, but I also think that, that is their job, and they don't have any schooling to worry about. Now they got their families to worry about and how to count all their money. But I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it. I mean, it's possible.
No, I think it's a good question. I don't think it's what I would call necessary or mandatory, but it's a good question for DeBoer. Maybe we'll run that up the chain at a press conference.
God, I would love it if he was like, folks, thanks for joining us today. I was listening to Locked On Bama the other day. They made a suggestion that we decided to take them up on. That would make me feel good. Anyway, I don't think that's happening. All right. Look, that's going to do it for today's podcast. And thank you for making Locked On Bama your first listen every day. Now go check out Locked On College Football. That podcast is awesome. From NIL deals to never-ending conference realignment rumors, Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron, and it's going to be a fun one, y'all. You can find the link to Locked On College Football in the description, so you don't need to go searching for it. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. And that's going to do it for today's Locked On Bama. We'll be back tomorrow with more. We'll be back this afternoon as soon as A.K. Deere commits to Alabama, fingers crossed. We'll have a little shorts out there for that. And until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll tide.